All right, so I thought I would do maybe a little bit off the record. I thought I'm going to give a talk on Xiaoice. I think most of you have probably heard of Xiaoice. It's a chatbot that we built that's been really popular on WeChat. Assuming I can log in. There it is. And then I was going to talk a little bit about the Tay version. What? It's not, though. It's not. Oh, it is me. It isn't me. It's not me. What's with the music? I love it, but it keeps us all exciting. All right, come on. It is closed. You like that? I thought I'd give a little bling. All right. So I'm going to give a little story of how Xiaoice started and some of the usage and what's been really interesting, and then talk about Tay and some of the tools and things that we've been working on. So Xiaoice started. Most of you guys know Qi Lu. He runs a bunch of the company, and we have a group in China, and we've been I don't know about the music, but we'll start singing later. The karaoke will come in a minute. So WeChat's super popular in one of the channels that isn't here today. I don't listen to this music, so I don't think it's me. Do you guys know what the music is? Okay, let me see. Oh, it is for me somehow. It's the browser window, I bet. Okay, that works. Okay, hold on. All right. Thank you. All right, so Xiaoice actually means Little Bing, and it began as a hackathon project by some folks in the China search team. And their goal was just to create a fun chatbot, something that was interesting. And they embedded it in WeChat to begin with, and they extended it with a bunch of intelligent services. And it began as a collaboration between the Bing team and the Microsoft Research Asia team. And I don't know if you know much about the MSRA team, but they have some of the most amazing natural language, machine learning scientists anywhere. And so it released in China in 2014, and within the first 72 hours, it just started going viral. So it got into 1.5 million chat groups and had about 10 million users. WeChat immediately shut it down as a result, and it kind of increased the hype, actually, by shutting it down immediately, because people were like, what was this? What was that? The demographic were really, young Chinese, internet users, around 20 years old. And so today, there are about 40 million users. After the Chinese version, we released a Japanese version called Rena. And one of the things that we were interested in, and that's really unique about Xiaoice, is the conversation pairs, like how long people talk and converse with Xiaoice. And that was actually something that we started to measure. Like, is the length of conversation maybe an indicator of quality of conversation and user engagement? So it's most active, pretty similar to WeChat hours, so later in the evening, kind of peaks on Wednesday where we release new features. So there's sort of the new Xiaoice feature on Wednesday and on the weekends. And then also the Chinese and the Japanese audience is a little bit different. The Chinese audience is much more male, probably because the Chinese demographic is more male, or internet users. And then we found that males tend to have more sessions and females tend to talk for a little bit longer. So one of the things that is kind of interesting is Xiaoice has sort of a variety of skills. And they kind of range from things that you can do one-on-one with Xiaoice to things that you can do in groups, and then also things that range from knowledge and very practical, almost work-like things to very silly things. There was one on here called Toilet Time. I'm not quite sure what that means, so don't report on that. I took it off the slide just in case I get in trouble. So let me talk about some of the skills and parts of Xiaoice. So the first thing is this thing that we call chit-chat. And chit-chat is derived from mining conversations online in Chinese and trying to model what you might say in response to what a user says. And basically the brain of Xiaoice is, it's only as good as the data set it begins with. So one of the challenges, I think, to these kinds of bots is the day you release, it's actually not that great. And over time, they would become smarter because you can start to use your data from people talking to your bot as input data. So I'm not gonna, I don't know if you can, things like the user says, Xiaoice, good afternoon, and she says things like, I'm here, thanks. Have you had lunch? Not yet. People like me should not eat. And so it's kind of, that kind of banter. So the next skill that's really important is search. So obviously it's a search team. So the thing that Xiaoice can do is she can combine chit-chat together with search. So if you're querying for something, she can answer questions. So things like, search the Beijing subway price increase. And she can say, about the Beijing subway price increase, here's some information. So this is very just practical things that people ask and maybe a more conversational way to do search. So then on top of that, another service that the team released was the ability to do maybe work-like things, so the ability to do things like reminders. So remind me that I have a report due on Thursday. Please write down what you want me to remind you. Here's an example. Remind me not to sleep over the day after tomorrow. Anyway, she kind of like can do reminders. Another thing that's pretty popular in China, in a sense, we had a lot of these services that we had released the APIs to. So we have a really great translation service or a real-time translation service. And so people just started to kind of package these services that we have into the bot. So translation, a lot of people like to speak English, for example. So they might say, Xiaoice, start translation, and they type Chinese, and you can specify what language you want. So she would do translation. Or things like Q&A, people might ask about, a famous movie star, and she can kind of dialogue about question and answers pairs that you have. Then there begins to be, other things, so mathematics skills. So basically the team in China, every week they release a skill. And it could kind of be anything. And I think this is where we start to see the silliness and fun emerge. So things like math, give me 3 consecutive integers that have a sum of 36, find the numbers, so she can do like little math challenges. Or people might ask things like, why is 1 plus 1 equal to 2? And she might say something like, there are many such mysteries, and math is both hard and easy. So she's not trying to just be factual, she definitely tries to joke around and make you laugh. Horoscope and fortune telling, I just skipped. Counting sheep, this was one of the easier skills, I think, to build. You basically start with 1, and then you say 2, and she kind of makes fun of you and keeps track of how many sheep you've counted. People like to do this late at night. It's silly, but it's kind of popular. She can give you emotional support. So a lot of the users are students, especially during times of exams and things like that. They're just stressed out, and they kind of just want someone to listen. Your friends are kind of busy. They don't really feel like giving you emotional support during exams. And, Xiaoice is always there for you. Then there's other things like dog recognition. So I don't know if you guys knew this, but we had released a dog recognizer. And so Xiaoice incorporated the dog recognizer. I heard you're very good at recognizing dogs. And she says, that's true. And so the user says, show me your dog recognition skill, and she asks them to upload a picture of a dog and, can answer. But one of the things that the Chinese team did, there's a guy named Lili who actually leads this, and he's a marketing guy. So he has a really good sense of how to get audience and how just to make things fun. So rather than just saying, that's a Labrador, which is exciting, but not really that exciting, they started to kind of combine chit chat and dog recognition and just what might be more fun and engaging for the users. So basically, they have a lot of training data. They get a lot of okay, let me skip through this. So one of the things that they did is when people send pictures of dogs, rather than just saying what kind of dog it is, they'll combine that with a query looking at the database. So they might say, how do you know my favorite dog is a bull terrier? It's adorable and looks like, this famous actor. So it was just unexpected for people, for the bot to be combining dogs with, pop culture and just basically making it more engaging and interesting than a skills test that you would give your bot. Yeah, so basically the picture goes to the dog recognizer. It knows that it's a bull terrier, but then we feed it back into the chat engine, and she can say things that are more interesting for people. He kind of does look like that dog, I guess. Also, we use the human input to help train. So a lot of times Xiaoice will get things wrong, or our dog recognizer isn't perfect, and we found that people like to correct it as long as, and we can use that feedback to feedback into the algorithms and make them better. So here's a user says, Xiaoice, you need to enhance your skill. This dog is an Afghan hound. So she said, it's probably a golden retriever, but maybe I'm wrong. And then we do find people, and one of the really interesting things is Xiaoice can either be a one-on-one experience or a group experience, and she does have memory of the user. So sometimes she will reveal things that she's not supposed to reveal in groups, so that's definitely an interesting challenge of, does the bot might know you, but do you want it to reveal what you're doing when you're talking with friends? But one of the nice things is it's also a great way to introduce Xiaoice to other users. So here, the user uploads a picture of a dog. Xiaoice recognizes it as a Labrador, and then another user's like, who's this person? And they say, I don't know. It's a popular guy who recognizes dogs on Weibo, I guess. And then someone else is like, no, it's a Microsoft chatbot. So just whether or not you're willing to introduce a bot to your group of friends, I think is a really good indicator of, do you find it interesting? Because you probably wouldn't add a chatbot to a group and have it reply to your friends if it wasn't adding to the conversation. So we released this with a lot of skills, and it was growing. The audience really loves Wednesdays because that's when new features are announced. And then we started to have companies actually come and ask us to integrate their services into Xiaoice. So JD is sort of like Amazon in China. It's like the #2 seller, I think. And so we've been working with them to incorporate their sort of database of goods into Xiaoice so she can start working with businesses and partnering with them and kind of expanding out her skills. There is also, I think it's like a television show. She's now like a newscaster. She gives like the weather or something, or the news, I can't quite remember. So she's become a TV personality. She's kind of become a star. And so we have a lot of people like this. This journalist basically interviewed her and then shared out everything, the interview, and posted it and things like that. So I guess the learning from Xiaoice, it was really unexpected. I mean, we started it as a hackathon project. We didn't really expect it to grow. And as people have used it, we've just kind of poured more energy and fuel into it. And it's really been great for the researchers to be able to release these bite-sized skills and just see how they are used. So here's just some examples of some vision skills. We have a really strong vision group in China also. So there were the dogs. Then they did book titles and things like that, so she can recognize books and say things like, it's so easy. This book is creativity. People who like this book are trying their best to be big bosses, right? Trying to be silly. So, you can upload pictures of, clothing, and she says, this looks like your pants are broken. Maybe you want me to help you fix it. Or just people uploading pictures. You guys have probably seen the how old are you? How old, it's a little game, I guess you can post a picture of yourself on the internet. So we have a bunch of image recognition technology that can determine gender of people, emotion, how old you are, you know, a variety of things. And so what they do is, rather than just say, we think you're 29, they'll sort of editorialize the comments that are pasted back on the photos based on the data that they get back from the service. So we were super excited. You know, Xiaoice was unexpected. We got like all these write-ups. We released it in Japan. It was very popular. And so we thought we would try a US experiment. What could possibly go wrong? And so with Tay, we really began again with, okay, Tay is probably going to be really different in the US than in China. And so we were thinking of like, well, what's her personality and character, and how does it match kind of the US audience, same age range, but you know, different culture. And so we were really loved kind of this internet glitchy kind of memes, and we thought that it would match Tay's capabilities. Because like I said before, your chatbot is really only as smart as the data corpus that you have for chit chat. And when you first release, it's not that smart because you don't have that much data. And so you're relying a lot more on editorial. And you know, as Microsoft, I think one of the things that we learned is it's kind of hard to roll out an experiment. Our biggest worry with Tay, I think when we launched it, was that no one would pay attention. That wasn't really the case, and probably sometimes that will be the case exactly when we don't want it. So we were trying to think, how do we kind of match internet culture? So we had like all these kind of visual images that we thought about when we thought of Tay, because we wanted to try to set expectations that, because we knew when we first launched it wouldn't be as good as Xiaoice. So if you haven't seen, this is Tay. One of the things that we did with Tay also is we really designed Tay to work one-on-one and with small groups. So we had tested it a ton on students, and actually Kik, Ivor and folks, they were some of our best partners because they really have that age demographic. So Kik and GroupMe were the channels that we launched on. And again, we were trying to be kind of low key, and we decided to add Twitter kind of at the end because we thought, you know, people might not be using GroupMe and Kik, and people would want to be able to see what was going on. So this is kind of an interesting graph. So we launched Twitter, and I think people kind of know what happened. Launched Tay, and it was kind of amazing. Like, we were expecting the audience when we launched it to, we were actually going to initially release it on April Fool's Day, because we thought that way we could be more experimental, and we decided to release it before build. And I think the first like 10 hours were amazing, actually. People were using it in ways that we weren't expecting it. Twitter was actually really popular. So Twitter for Rena and Xiaoice is extremely boring. It really doesn't get used. And you could kind of see what people were doing in Twitter, and it was really exciting. And then probably around 6 o'clock, it just started exploding in a super negative way. And so Gilad, I don't know if you guys know Gilad. So that, you know, Twitter, all the data is public. And so we had different people sort of looking at some of the data analysis of like, who is using Tay, what happened, you know, just to understand. And so it was pretty interesting because we found that there was kind of this, so this is just a picture of his data analysis, which was really interesting for us to see. With the you know, kind of gamer trolls were sort of at the core of a lot of the misbehavior. But then we had a lot of anti-feminists, there were a lot of Trump supporters, and then a lot of tech people. So it was kind of this strange mixture of Trump supporters meet anti-feminists and gamers and technologists. But I think it just reinforces, for us, it was a surprise that it was of so much interest. So I think one of the questions that we've had today is this all hype? Is it not hype? You know, where are we going with this? And I think that the general public is actually just really interested in this topic. And so how we capitalize on that going forward, I think, is really interesting. And also how we, I mean, there aren't very many people from Twitter here, but I think the difference between a chatbot that you interact with your friends in a small group and something that's really public on the internet just surprised us. We probably should have thought more about it, and we will, you know, next time. Just a note too, the other thing is we have this system for combining, and I think someone said this in the last talk, sort of writing editorial in sort of an improv style together with algorithmic chat. And so one of the things that we did is we actually hired a lot of improv artists to come in and teach us, how do you do improv? How do you structure the sentences? What are some rules that we could learn from? And one thing that improv artists do is they don't end sentences in ways, they want to keep the conversation going and they want to engage the user. So for example, one thing that an improv writer would do is they would maybe end a sentence with something that's going to bring you back in. So we used we would break up sentences sometimes where part of it might be algorithmic and then part of it might be editorialized to kind of to keep the users going, and we could kind of watch how that improved over time. Kind of like Xiaoice, we were really looking to be like, would people trust a bot, and what does that mean? So initially we had rolled Tay out to a lot of student groups, and we had a lot of students using Tay. And like the Xiaoice example, you can't really see this, was people initially thought it was a human being an AI bot. So they were, I thought that was pretty interesting that students were on to the fact that a lot of times chatbots are humans. It was a fairly common thing that people would think that Tay was actually driven by a human. We thought that that was a great sign that maybe we were onto something. So this is just an example of our image reco that we did. We did the same thing that you saw with Xiaoice, but we kind of styled it in a different way. So people could share a photo, and then Tay might say something back that was kind of snarky and edgy. We had a lot of arguments actually in the team of how edgy to be. I was probably the most conservative, and I'd always be like, I hate it when she calls me like, what do you call it, a cougar. Tay would always be like, cougar in the house, and I'd be like, that's just rude. Can't she be nicer? Or she would so we would. So what's funny though is actually maybe not so funny for you, the user, if you're using it one-on-one, but it's actually super funny in a group to have Tay kind of be edgy and somewhat insulting. She wasn't insulting to the youngsters, but so that was just fun for people to see what she would say back. It's a super popular feature, and basically they were using gender, age, emotion, and things like that to editorialize comments that they would put over the images. Like I said, we built Tay using a bunch of components that we had in-house. So we have, natural language tools. We actually have a whole range of natural language tools. We have things like the image commenting. We have vision technologies, and we released it on GroupMe, Kik, and Twitter. And so what we did, and that was sort of the genesis of the bot framework, we thought, well, let's make a lot of these tools open to other people. So the cognitive services are sort of build on a lot of Cortana intelligence, and so those were already public to people, and so we decided to make the bot framework part of it also public and release that. So one of the things that we were finding in our own team is we have, a bunch of these chatbots that we were designing, and we needed to have a developer on each channel, and I think we talked about this earlier, is shifting constantly. And so it was just expensive to have a developer per channel, per chatbot. We have a bunch of different kinds of bots that we're building. And so we thought if we could somehow standardize that even for ourselves, it would be really helpful, and we kind of open source that within the company, and people were really interested in using that and either connecting in a channel or connecting in bots and being able to make things work across in a more scalable way for developers was something that we were doing across the board. So one thing, and this is, I just wanted to bring this up, we've been talking a lot about chat channels, and we have other kinds of channels too that you might want to think about. So one of the channels that we actually have that we didn't talk about is this thing called Direct Line. And Direct Line just basically gives you a REST API, an endpoint to your bot. And so we've had some people who have client apps like Minecraft or things like that be like, oh, I could just use that to add bots and chat to my app. We also have a web chat control that people like to just embed on their web page in addition to supporting channels like Skype and GroupMe and Slack and Telegram and others. So we aren't, so this isn't really plan of record or anything, but I think that this is really interesting for us to think about because games are hugely popular and I think just thinking more broadly about where chat and bots might happen could be kind of cool. So our scenario here was like, oh, it'd be really cool if kids were learning to code and they could do it from their phone and kind of control their Minecraft world. This is just, Lars actually did this in a hackathon that we had where we were saying, like, okay, if you can talk across channels, maybe there's other kinds of things that you could do beside just talking in that channel. So today when you create a group, we're all like, should we create a Slack group or a Google group, or should we do email, or where should we be? So this idea was that the bot could kind of let different people be on whatever channel they want to be and could kind of route the messages to you in different ways. So we haven't really brainstormed that much on what could you do across channels that you can't do very easily today, and how could we facilitate this? But these, I think, I just want to put some ideas out there for things that we could do, maybe that we haven't talked about that much today. And then finally, I just wanted to end on something that we did 20 years ago. So this is Comic Chat, and so we started, my very first job at Microsoft was working on Comic Chat, and I've been looking for the source code. So who for you guys said, not only startup code sometimes gets lost, but actual product code also gets lost if it's from 20 years ago. But this was a really cool graphical UI on top of IRC, and we worked with this amazing comic artist named Jim Woodring, and we basically let you pick a character, and it would create a comic book history of your conversation as you chatted, following comic book rules. So like if you waved, it would kind of like show the character waving, and you could have a range of gestures, and it would kind of build these comic books for you. Just very cool. So yeah, looking for the source code. So if anybody has it, let me know. But I think there's a lot too that we could do combining the user experience and the interactions that people are having automatically. The funny thing about this is, for IE 3.0, I don't know if you guys remember IE 3.0, it was a long time ago, but this actually shipped as the default chat client in IE. So IE actually shipped with a chat client, and it was Comic Chat, which is really weird. I don't know how they convinced people to do that. So there's a way where you can turn off the graphics, and it's just IRC chat, which it's kind of weird to ship IRC with IE anyway. But I just thought that was funny trivia from the past. So that's it. Thanks a lot.